this is the one we're making today. If you continue watching, you'll see how exactly we made this. Here I want to use double-sided tape again, since I love double-sided tape, as you may know. I'm putting it along the center. I have cut this strap a little narrower now because my little swivel hooks, they're so small in this cut. I only have these, so I need to use them no matter what. So I've cut the strap a little narrower. Sometimes you just have to use what you've got. Most of the time. Fold that over to half of the double-sided tape. We can afford to use half of it. If you didn't have enough material or enough fabric to make the strap in one long go, then you have to splice it on the diagonal, because that will make it so much prettier. Otherwise you get one big lump straight across if you do it straight. Let's keep a tiny, I don't know if you can see it, letting them almost meet, because I don't want it to be so very, very thick in the fold there. If I leave a little gap there, then my crease on that will be sharper. This is a very sturdy strap material. So now I fold it over there again. Now I can sew the other side. I'll sew it in the same direction again. Now I'm sewing where the glue is. So my needle is going to get gummed up, but I'm going to show you how to deal with it. By sewing in the same direction, the strap don't look twisted. Now let's put the slider on here. My machine doesn't like so much to go backwards on very thick material, especially not when it's gummed up. So I'm helping it a little bit. When you have a strap, one side is normally prettier than the other. So you take the pretty side out. So you take one swivel hook, and then we're going to see if we can pull this through the slider, and we have to pull it through again. Sometimes when I'm sewing on thick material, I don't even want the strap adjustable. Then we don't have to deal with all this thick lump here where the strap adjuster is. That's how that is. Everything is a little tight here because it's the wrong size. And now we'll put in the last swivel hook. Very tight. Try to sew over there a couple times. I want a rivet here as well. The edges will be raw here. They are not going to ever fray, but we can make them pretty even. So there is the strap ready. We are getting closer. So this circle will now go around the front and the back. So let's start with, let's start with the back. So we practice a little. So that's the back, and then I'm just deciding where I want the zipper to start. I want it there. So I have clipped little mark, folded this, clipped tiny little clips so I know where the center is on all these parts. So what I'll do is in the corner here, I'm going to cut a little snip in so I can bend the fabric 90 degrees around. Not too far though. See now? I get an opening there, and I have to do the same on the top, exactly where it's going to have to be. I stick my fingers in there and feel that there's no zipper pulls or anything like that in the way that I'm now going to sew across. It's going to be there. And as you see, if you don't grab too much seam allowance in places you shouldn't, this fits perfectly. I'll put a clip in it to make it easier to lay flat here for me. Okay, so now I'm going to sew around here, and then afterwards I'm going to put the binding on. But since it's a little hassle to sew around here, I have to hand crank a little and everything. I'm trying to save myself against my normal principles, because normally I still like to sew one thing at a time. But because this is so hard to sew around, as I said, when we cut the binding, it's cut bias on the diagonally on the fabric, right? We iron that up so it's easy to start. So I'm starting from the bottom. So what I'll do now is I'll clip this in so we get to sew that too. Yes, okay. In the corners, that's going to be not so great. Okay. So you have to finagle a little in the corners. I guess you can maybe cut a little cut there to make it easier, to make it lay flat there in the corner. I'll even stick a pin in the lining part because I can. I'm now following all the way around, putting my bias, see, getting my bias tape. In on this seam, because then if I can manage all these layers in one seam, I only need to do one more seam on each side, and I like that. Because I did myself a bad favor putting so much fleece on the backing of this. The bag of course will look so much sturdier. So if you use fleece, maybe you should cut away the seam allowance on the fleece before you iron it on. And then in the pattern description I say continue 1 inch. This one now can be cut a little there. If everything looks nice here, we can start sewing. That looks all right to me. Let's just start. Let's start on the bottom. See how thick this is. We have glue on the needle. So what we'll use is acetone. I don't know if nail polish remover is strong enough, but acetone will do the job. We take a little cotton swab, acetone on, and then I rub the needle with that. That will get the glue off the needle quick. Let's try again. I like to do a couple stitches extra in the corners. That's a weak point. I'm using this so as to protect my own fingers. So now we come to the real thick stuff here. So I'll hand crank. Fold it out of the way. Coming to a tough point again. You can hear the machine doesn't love it, but it is doing its job. Let's see how it looks on the back here. Yeah, that looks great. So now we have to cut away a little of the seam allowance. Not too much, especially in the corners a little bit. You see here, I'm not cutting a lot, just cutting a little bit in the corners and a little bit along the side. Because I didn't use a lot of seam allowance to begin with. 1/3 of an inch is not very much. That's our regular seam allowance. Okay, so now we'll fold this binding over to the other side, and then we're going to fold it and top stitch it. So when you do it this way, look how straight and tight the lining is. It's a very good way to do when you're dealing with small bags like this. It's a smart way to do the binding solution instead of sewing the lining separately. It looks a little complicated, but it is easier. So I'm folding it loosely. I'm not stretching and struggling around here. What I really don't want to do when I sew this part now is to sew too far up so that we grab too much seam allowance. We don't want that. I'm kind of keeping an eye so I can see the seam under here, so I know that I'm not grabbing too much. I'm not sewing even in the seam under, I'm trying to stay outside of it so there's no risk of me getting too close. Almost there. Now this part, when we only deal with one, that's the easy part. Let's see if that will work. Doesn't look too bad. We have to keep in mind the front is thicker because it has a layer of cork. So, and fleece on the lining. So we have made it a little difficult for ourselves here. We're still optimistic and trying to do the binding in the same operation. Actually, if you find this almost impossible, like if you don't have a good machine like this, you could always do it by hand. You could always stitch this last seam by hand. Because now we have a couple extra layers because we're folding this. amazing that it works, even though it's a little hard work. It doesn't skip a stitch or anything, so that's awesome. Just a little hard on the one on the right hand. I guess we're ready to turn it around. It's so stiff, it's going to be interesting just that. Ooh. But it's surely going to hold its shape when we use it. Now we can massage the edge here a little bit, especially roll it a little here between the cork and the waterproof canvas. Let's make sure we get everything out. It's so nice and stiff. It's almost worth all the hard work. So you see my little trick here with the front pocket? It's not sticking up. It had to be that because it has to fold around to go into the seam there. So now we only need to clip this in place. We need the little rivets. There, we need to put 3 rivets in. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you how to put the rivets in. You use the part with the little stem on, and you stick it in the hole that we did with a hole punch. Then we just center it under the machine, and that's it. That's all. I did the same on that side, and I did the same here. It's very easy, but this is very, very handy tool because you can use it for rivets and grommets, and it can even punch its own holes if you don't want to use a hole punch. So there we go. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today making this Alvid bag. I hope you will enjoy making it. It's not complicated, it's just nice. It's nice and a little hard work if you use as much interfacing as I did. Good luck with your own. If you want the pattern, you have to go to my website annebonniebags.com, and then you can buy the pattern. Thank you for staying with me so long. Have a wonderful day.